Thank you. Thank you very much. It's almost 2:30, and we have only 1 hour for this session, so let's not waste any minutes. Welcome to what... Ah, il faut que j'attende. Welcome everyone to what is going to be probably the most interesting and passionate debate of this COP, because we are going to talk about the Green Deal, which is not the first time we are going to speak about it, but mostly because we are going to hear local governments leaders, mayors, councillors, who are going to explain and have a discussion on how the Green Deal is going to support the transition towards a resilient and more sustainable Europe and world. So this afternoon we have 1 hour, so it's very short. I will be very short myself. For two panels. First panel, we will have Liviu Stribat, who is Deputy Head of Unit of the European Commission, and will set the scene, if I can say so. Then we will have Ronan Dantec. Ronan Dantec is Senator of France, but he's also a councillor in Nantes, and he has been following the COPs for the last 15 years. We've been doing that together, so I won't explain, but it will be interesting also to have his perspective on how he sees the evolution and the possible result of this COP. Then we'll have Stephen Heddle. Stephen Heddle is a spokesperson on territorial development for the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, which is the European Federation of National Associations of Local Governments associations, and he is also a councillor of Orkney, which is a very nice council in Scotland. So he's the host of this event. Then we'll have Léonore Monconduit. Léonore is the mayor of Poitiers. Poitiers is in France, in can we say southwest of France? Yes, center southwest of France. And she is also a spokesperson for Platforma and a vice president of Cités Unies France, which is the association in gathering local governments in France working on cooperation development. And at the end of this panel, we will have Arnaud Bonté, who is the vice mayor of the city of Rotterdam, but I don't see him yet. So, oh, he will be on video. Okay, perfect. Online, sorry. And the second panel will be organized just after this one with the representative of Jordan. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Then a representative of Indonesia and a representative of someone else. Vivid Economics. And this second panel will be chaired by my colleague from the GGI, the Global Green Growth Institute, which is co-organizing this event with CMR. And so I will give her the floor first of all, because we will have a video from Ban Ki-moon, who is leading the Global Green Growth Institute. So please.
Yes, thank you Very much. So my name is Ingvild Solvang, and I said I'm with the Global Green Growth Institute based in South Korea, usually. And we have our members here from Jordan and Indonesia as well with Vivid Economics. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the president and chair of GGGI, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, to give an opening remarks for this session. Thank you very much.
Distinguished participants and guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this event at the COP26 EU Pavilion. According to the updated report of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, we are headed towards a disastrous warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius, indicating that we are far from doing enough. We are not seeing enough bold climate commitments for mitigation and adaptation. We need more climate finance, technology transfer, and the capacity building required to enable all countries achieve a sustainable and inclusive development and resilience. The EU Green Deal is a keystone for European policy framework for recovery, as it is a roadmap to resilient, carbon-neutral EU by 2050. However, sustainable recovery is a bottom-up process, and local and regional governments are proving more pragmatic and innovative at implementing green recovery initiatives. Therefore, a decentralized approach to cooperation appears to be a necessary element to achieve sustainable development and recovery from the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, we need to ensure that vulnerable communities are not left behind, and we need to pay attention to how we achieve sustainable development. During my tenure as Secretary General of the United Nations, I worked very hard to help realize the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I am therefore very proud that GGGI's support for its member countries contributes to the majority of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and defines green growth as environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive growth. Because in the end, any growth that is not equitable or neglects women, children, or any minority group of society is inherently unsustainable. We can see the devastating climate change impacts on many vulnerable communities in the form of rising sea levels, wildfires, heat waves, and droughts, and other extreme weather events. It is difficult to read the news without also reading about how climate change fuels conflicts and migration. The eye of the entire global community is on COP26, and I do hope the insights and knowledge that you exchange over the course of COP26 will help move all of us closer to achieving net zero by 2050. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for your participation in this important event. I encourage all of you to work together and continue the momentum, and I extend my best wishes for very productive and successful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. It's an honor to have you launching this session. So the EU Green Deal is a key element to drive a successful, sustainable and resilient recovery. And President Ursula von der Leyen was the one organizing this Green Deal, even before the COVID pandemic. But for us, as EU local and regional governments, we are striving to get some pragmatic ideas out of this Green Deal to see how we can implement activities and policies on the ground linked to the Green Deal, and how the Green Deal can help cities and regions to develop their own policies. So to start with, I would like to give the floor to Liviu Stribat to ask you how the EU Green Deal can be the tool that leads Europe recovery in the next 10 years, and how the Green Deal can support local and regional development policies on the ground. So please, the floor is yours.
Many thanks for the opportunity to be here and to give a couple of context remarks on the EU Green Deal and to answer these very, very relevant questions. First, let me reiterate that the European Green Deal is the EU's roadmap to sustainability. It's an agenda for green growth. And as such, we talk about it a lot, but what it is, it's a coherent package with significant elements, significant puzzle pieces on mitigation, on adaptation to climate change, on innovation, on renovation, on inclusiveness. So it's really a package that leaves no one behind and brings everybody forward. It proved to be, as you said yourself, rather COVID-proof, if you will. So it was launched before the pandemic. But we doubled down on it, and we made it also a vector for the post-pandemic recovery. In it, some of the highlights are the climate law, which set in a sort of constitutional fashion climate neutrality in law for the Union as a whole, legitimizing the ambition to become the first climate neutral continent. It also means ambition in the short term to be able to get there. The latest is the Fit for 55 package, which commits us to deliver 55% reductions in greenhouse gases by 2030. This is coupled with the adaptation strategy, also in the Green Deal, giving credit to the notion that we can no longer even claim to mitigate ourselves out of this, and adaptation is the flip side of mitigation. So with the new adaptation strategy, which was adopted earlier this year, we really put adaptation on equal footing with mitigation, also in the climate law itself. And we add, very importantly for the event happening here in Glasgow, we add an important international dimension to adaptation, which was absent from EU adaptation policy before that. I can also say that the Green Deal makes climate action a priority, and this is translated also in the EU long-term budget, also in the recovery plans. Significant targets are set, percentages of all of this money have to be devoted to climate action. There's also a significant chunk of it going to climate action and to sustainability from budgets as diverse as Horizon Europe, which is on research and innovation, but also on LIFE, dedicated to climate action and environmental protection, in the structural funds and really across the entire budget. Also, on the international level with the Green Deal, we deepened our partnerships with our closest allies. We strengthened cooperation with all major economies, our partners. We propose additional climate and biodiversity funding for the most vulnerable countries. So it's really both looking inward in how Europe itself needs to be put on this path to sustainability, but also how we can help others, our international partners. Again, a very important signal that we bring to Glasgow. And this is actually as part of the Green Deal, the increased ambition on mitigation, the Fit for 55 package, and the adaptation strategy are very important contributions that we brought as the Union here in Glasgow to show the world, to try to be a role model, to inspire others, to show that it can be done. And I'd like to close with a very important message that I've passed similarly yesterday in a session like this one on localizing the nationally determined contributions from the Paris Agreement. The fact that we cannot have a Green Deal without a local deal. The fact that we cannot have, it's so vital, it's so crucial to have a solid anchoring in leaders of the communities, of the authorities. Otherwise, we will not have the big, shiny package of the Green Deal unless it goes on the ground, really where the people live and where you are leading those people. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me first tell you that a lot of mayors, a lot of cities are engaged in Europe, as you know, through the Covenant of Mayors. We have about 10,000 mayors, signatories of the Covenant of Mayors.
11,000 now.
Well, at the world level, but I think it's 10,000 in Europe. And we are also engaged in many programs like the Green City Accord, which is developing now, and many others. But Ronan Dantec, who is with us, has been the spokesperson of the LGMA in those COPs for many years, spokesperson of also CMR and UCLG on climate change. How do you see the evolution, and how do you see also, initiatives like the Green Deal support the development of what the mayors have been engaged into for so many years?
It's a lot of questions.
And you have only 2 minutes.
Sentence. Okay. Maybe we are in the paradox at the moment. First, we know now that it's impossible to reach the targets of European Union, 55 less in 2030, if we have not the mobilization of local government. It's absolutely impossible. Just one result, and it's an official result of the Covenant of Mayors. Between 23 and 2018, the emission in Europe decreased around 17%. And in the cities who are member of the Covenant is 28%. 28. A real difference. And the territories who are member of the Covenant, it's around 15% of the inhabitants of Europe. It's clear, it's absolutely clear. If we have not this mobilization, we have not this result at the European level. And for the future, it's the same thing. It's not how the Green Deal can help the city and the territories. It's how you mobilize cities and territories to reach the targets of European Union. It's in other sense. It is in other sense. And the paradox, maybe more at the world level, and with Frederic, we have passed a lot of time, a lot of meeting for few words in the text in Cancun of everywhere in the world. We have a progress during, I think, 10 years between Copenhagen and maybe Bonn, the last COP in Bonn. The role of local government was admitted, was integrated in the discussions. It's always a little bit integrated in some events, in some side events, in some debate. But in the official text, this role is decreasing. Clearly, for example, this morning, for the text for Article 6, forget local government. Why? There is a lot of different questions. Maybe there is a link between local government and democracy is decreasing at the world level. And when democracy is decreasing, role of local government decreasing. It's clear there is a parallel. It's a point, and maybe a second point that we don't reach to clearly explain how our role is crucial. I think in Europe it's easier, but for other countries, it's incredible that they don't integrate role of local government in their national determined contribution. And if they integrate their role, they can propose a better contribution. It's a real paradox. It is the first point at the world level at this moment, but we have seen after the fail of the Talanoa dialogue that we have more difficulty to continue the debate with some country. I have the name of the countries, but it's not the debate today. The second point, it is...
Very fast.
Very fast, but it was a lot of questions. The second point, it's about European Union. Clearly, at this moment, of course, we have always this question, how we have a direct access to European finance, and we know it's impossible in the treaty. We know that. Or it's difficult, we must find some road, detour, okay. But maybe more important at this moment, and we must absolutely discuss this point, it is that for some country, maybe Poitiers, we don't discuss with Léonard, but an important point I see is the city of Nantes, I am always consider, if we have loan with long-term loan, 40 years, for example, with interest rate around 0, we have capacity to retrofit all our building. We have capacity to develop renewable energy, photovoltaic everywhere on the building. But we have not this loan. Maybe it's more a question of subsidies than a question of loan, but a specific loan, very, very long term, and interest rate around 0. I think it's possible. Maybe it's easier that the access to European finance directly, because of course, European Union is 27 countries first. But about this point, I think we have to discuss really concretely is the tools that we need at the local level because, and I conclude, CO2 emission, a large part of CO2 emission is daily life. And daily life is the decision of local government.
Thank you, Ronan. And yes, we are pushing on that, and I think we will succeed in getting long-term, even 50 years or 60 years loans for investment. Stephen, I said earlier that you are the host here because you are from Scotland. How do you see the involvement of local governments and the challenges that you have to raise? And you come from an island that is probably very affected already by climate change. So how do you see this evolution?
Well, thank you, Frederick. Thanks for the opportunity to contribute to this session. As you've introduced, I'm also here today in Glasgow as the Environment Economy spokesperson of COSLA, the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, the National Host Association. So I'm very pleased to be able to welcome so many of you to Glasgow finally. COSLA and our colleagues from the rest of the UK will also be welcoming you to a session tomorrow on the Cities and Regions Day, and I'm very pleased to say that Senator Dantec will be joining us in that. However, whatever we do, all our collective effort will amount to little unless we're able to influence the outcome of the negotiations here in Glasgow. And we only have 2 days left. We've been very clear that we want the final communique in this summit to go beyond what COP21 in Paris said about the role of local and regional government in delivering climate ambition. And COSLA and the rest of our UK peers have explicitly asked Alok Sharma, who's the UK president of COP26, that this should be a key negotiation outcome for the UK as presidency. So I'm calling on everybody here to try and influence your own national associations in this respect to achieve the best outcome for local government. Also, local governments worldwide do not necessarily have the means and resources to deliver climate ambition as we have in Scotland and the UK. Therefore, the least that we can do for them to help our peers from other countries is by ensuring that the Glasgow deal contains strong provisions that do not leave any local authority behind. Because national climate plans will not happen without local government. We have a good precedent that realises this in the form of the Edinburgh Declaration in the UN biodiversity negotiations, where the role of local government is explicitly recognised in a chapter. I'd like to quickly reiterate the key points that we're pressing on the COP negotiators as the CEMR. Firstly, that the Paris Agreement needs to be delivered now, covering both mitigation and adaptation at all levels. that local and regional leadership and action are key to strengthening work at international level within the UNFCCC and collaboration with global partners. That providing appropriate regulatory frameworks, financial and technical resources is necessary and essential for the implementation of local and regional governments' climate action. The localisation of the SDGs are fundamental to having a positive impact on the ground. And here in Scotland, we've gone towards this through the National Performance Framework, which will soon make the SDGs legally binding for local authorities. We also press that climate justice and social equity need to go hand in hand to combat climate change inequalities efficiently, and that resilience and recovery should be the focus to guide society out of the pandemic crisis. Now, to achieve this, we obviously have to consider climate finance. And in terms of incentives and support to achieve carbon neutrality in our territories, we're still missing direct and quick access to local finance. We experience legal barriers, lengthy procedures, lack of expertise in applying for EU funding, or in our case in the UK, replacements to EU funding, with no direct link between the national and local level to access funds. So there is still the need to build capacities of local and regional governments in climate finance. The recent work of the CEMR on the impact of COVID-19 on local and regional governments' finance shows both the diversity but also the incoherence of support measures that's been put in place by our national governments to help us cope with the effects of the pandemic. And we find that if measures such as climate taxation are introduced that impact too directly on citizens, specific economic sectors or regions, we risk rejection, an allergic reaction, and a counterproductive impact. And this is why initiatives such as the Just Transition Fund and the Social Climate Fund proposed by the EU are steps in the right direction. With regard to our local dimension in Scotland, in common with the whole world, climate change is clearly one of the biggest challenges we face. In COSLA, we've set a strategic goal for our just transition to net zero no later than 2045. And in Scotland, that can only happen with all of our 32 municipalities, as we manage 1/3 of the public budget and deliver many of the public services in Scotland. As local government, we've made clear commitments to net zero and integrating carbon reduction into every aspect of what we do, along with a clear focus on biodiversity and also integrating nature-based solutions. So local government's not just about the delivery of vital services, but it's about the places we live and the lives that we lead. So, in conclusion, we're at a crossroads, and we must decide what type of world we want to build, what type of world we want to live in, both as a response to climate change and in coming out with the COVID pandemic. The linkage between the environment, human health, and well-being and economy has rarely been clearer. And local and regional government must play its part and be enabled to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen, and congratulations for the commitment. Because if we are in fit for 55 in the EU, I see that you're fit for the 75 in Scotland. So that's probably one of the highest level in Europe. So very great congratulations for that, Stephen. To all the people of Scotland, of course, not only to you. Leonor. You're mayor of a city, a medium-sized city in Europe, Poitiers, but you have the global perspective because you're a spokesperson of Platforma and Cités Unies France, as I said before. So you have this idea that climate change, and we all share that, has to be handled at global level with also the partnerships, the interactions we can create with our partners in the world to create this global advocacy that is needed for local action. So can you give us a little bit of perspective on this?
Yeah, thank you. First, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk in the name of local governments, but as a mayor, we are at the front line of climate change. So, and climate change has to be handled from global to local debates. So, as mayors, as local governments, we are at the front line to reduce our impact on climate. So, the front line of mitigation issues you mentioned before. That's the point of the Green Deal, becoming climate neutral and reducing Europe's impacts on climate. And so just as importantly as we are at the front line to tackle climate change, we are at the front line of Green Deal, as Ronan mentioned before. Green Deal can succeed only when all levels of governments are engaged. So in our cities, like in Poitiers, we are implementing policies based on real-world data in nearly every sector of Green Deal. First, we decarbonize our energy system. We encourage the production of renewables, solar power in my city, but mostly methanization because we are an agricultural territory. Our territory, as an example, has led the way in France in terms of production of biogas. Produced fully from local resources, and shortly 100% of our buses will run on biogas. We'll make our buildings greener by upgrading their energy efficiency, but well, too slowly because we don't have means support enough. We encourage the transitions of mobility through non-polluting public transport and so on. So many examples. Of course, there are high-cost actions, low-cost actions, but anyway, we need support to implement really ambitious public policies. For small cities like mine, and even more for cities in more vulnerable zones, it's hard to mobilize European funds. For instance, even for recovery funds, we benefited for only a few funds which were only dedicated to vaccination centers. So it's not structural help enough. So I mentioned that local governments were at the front line of mitigation issues, but we are and will be more and progressively at the front line to adapt our territories to climate change and to protect our populations for climate-induced crises. When we talk about floods, heat waves, as you said, as Mr. Ban Ki-moon said, we are in charge, concretely. Yeah. And I believe in setting real-world climate change goals. So as a result, I advocate for the reinforcement of adaptation policies. The Paris Agreement committed governments to supply a balanced policy frameworks and funding systems, half dedicated to mitigation, half dedicated to adaptation. Today, we estimate that less of 25%, I guess, are in favor of adaptation. It's not enough. So the problem is quite similar for European policies. I was interested in what you said, but today it is estimated that European funds are mainly geared towards mitigation, but we need political frameworks and financial support to really begin adaptation at our local level. This is the condition for driving a really resilient recovery, which was the theme of this table today. What we ask is enhancing state commitments and ground them on multi-level collaboration. We demand stronger NDCs, strongly bridged with local and regional climate plans, and we demand that national and local recovery plans are also in line with NDCs. We are ready to join UN initiatives like Cities Race to Zero or Cities Race to Resilience. Maybe you heard about it. But we need support to fulfill our commitments. And I wonder if European funds could not be linked to the commitments in international frameworks like Cities Race to Zero or Cities Race to Resilience. And we need Europe to take the step from mitigation to adaptations to structured adaptation. This is the real resilience, according to me. And post-COVID recovery must not only maintain territories under perfusion, locked in kind of a status quo. It has to help them, the most vulnerable of them in Europe and in the world, to anticipate and to build resilient climate change adaptation plans. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. I think your points are more than valid, and I hope that our colleague from the Commission can take them also to bring them back to the Commission. I'm not sure we have time for any answer, but I'm sure you will, and we will make sure you do. But we have a video probably from Mr. Arnaud Bonte, who is the Vice Mayor of Rotterdam. Oh, he's here. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So you have been working on implementing specific policies in your city linked to energy transition, to enhance energy transition, and to cooperate also with the business sector, knowledge institutes, citizens, and other stakeholders. Could you say in a very brief, what is it about?
Yeah, Frederik, thanks a lot. And let me start to underline that I agree with all the previous speakers, and especially with Mr. Sribat, who said we cannot have a European Green Deal without local deals. And that's exactly what I agree with, and I will illustrate you how our approach in Rotterdam makes sure that we have a strong Green Deal on the local level. For Rotterdam, fighting the climate crisis is a top priority. We are a city that is located in the middle of a river delta, so we are very vulnerable for climate change. So that is our first motivation to fight the climate crisis. But we are aware that we are also a huge contributor to the climate change, because we have a huge industrial area within our borders and produce also a lot of CO2. So we also feel a strong moral obligation to take measures against the climate crisis. How did we do that? We have a strong ambition as a city government, but we have realized that we could not do that alone. We needed, of course, the help from our national government, also from the European government. So that's why I'm very glad that the EU came up with this European Green Deal. But we also need to work together with our citizens, with organizations in the city, and with companies. And that's the reason why in 2019 we made, together with all our partners, the Rotterdam Climate Agreement. And in this agreement, we identified 55 so-called climate deals to take measures to reduce the amount of CO2 in our city. I will give you 3 examples. One of the climate deals focuses on creating a hydrogen hub in the port of Rotterdam. Now, the main energy sources in the port are coal, oil, and natural gas, and we want to transfer that into hydrogen and the usage of clean energy sources like solar and wind power. The second climate deal is a deal that focuses on zero emissions mobility. This is a deal we made together with employers and transport organizations to make our mobility, our trucks, our cars, zero emission as soon as possible. And the third climate deal I would like to mention is what we call the rooftop revolution. We have the ambition to place solar panels on at least 40% of our rooftops. Already in the last 3 years, we expanded the amount of solar panels from 100,000 to 300,000. And in 2025, we want to have at least 1 million solar panels on our roofs. So this is just an example of 3 of the 55 climate deals that really bring in practice the fight against the climate crisis on the local level. And we have been successful so far already. We've managed to convert the annual growth of carbon emissions into a downward trend. And if we are able to implement all the climate deals we will be able to reduce CO2 emissions by at least 50% in 2030. But that's not the only results. With implementing this climate deals together with our companies and organizations and our citizens, we are also able to create more jobs on the local level, more business opportunities and cleaner air for our city. So the Rotterdam approach, in which key factors are working together and implementing ambitious goals. With this approach, we are able to fight the climate crisis in an effective way, but we are also able to create a greener, a healthier, and a better city for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arno. And saying that, I'm going to now give the floor to the second panel. We have a little video in between, so stay tuned, and then we'll hear the second panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the previous panel for all those inspiring thoughts. We've seen now how the European Green Deal operates also at subnational levels here in Europe. We are now going to shift focus and look a little bit about how the Green Deal also supports green and climate resilient transitions in countries like Jordan and Indonesia. So looking at the international cooperation side of that, and also listen to some of the experiences of Jordan and Indonesia in green transitions and aligning NDCs with the recovery aspect, recovering from the pandemic and the economic downturns. We have three speakers today, and in order of appearance, I want to introduce online, we have Mr. Paul Rowe, who is Engagement Manager for Vivid Economics. As you know, they have developed a very interesting and well quoted and cited methodology to assess the greenness of stimulus, which he will share a bit about in a minute. We also have online His Excellency Dr. Arifin Redianto, Selamat Malam, Pak, in Indonesia. Thank you for being with us. We know it's late for you there. We also have here on stage in Glasgow His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Kashashne, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment in Jordan. So it's a great honor to welcome all three of you. And without further ado, if I may turn to you, Paul, could you please share a little bit about the greenness of stimulus work that you've been doing, and how green are the stimulus packages that we see come forward?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. As mentioned, I'm Paul Rowan, Engagement Manager leading on green growth research projects of Vivid Economics. I'll be speaking to you today about a research project recently conducted jointly between GTGI and Vivid Economics to assess the greenness of fiscal stimulus responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. And if we could get the slides up, please. Not those ones. I'll keep talking whilst we find the right slides. So the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated global economies and societies, significantly reducing output, economic output, increasing unemployment and job insecurity, and widening social inequalities, with some of the world's most vulnerable people being the most severely impacted by the effects of the pandemic. In response, governments around the world have introduced significant fiscal spending to protect lives, support jobs, and stimulate economic production and demand. So given the scale and nature of the spending, with over $925 billion spent across the 14 countries assessed in this research, and approximately $20 trillion spent across the world more widely, the fiscal response to COVID-19 has the potential to put economies onto new growth and development trajectories and significantly influence the course of climate change. So in this research, we have analysed the fiscal policy responses of 14 GTGI member countries, assessing over 1,500 fiscal policies to gauge their potential impact on the environment and nature. We did this using Vivid Economics' Greenness of Stimulus Index methodology, or the GSI. So the Greenness of Stimulus Index assesses the effectiveness of COVID-19 stimulus efforts in ensuring an economic recovery that takes advantage of sustainable growth opportunities and builds resilience through the protection of the climate and nature. It provides a consistent methodology to gauge the current impact of COVID-19 responses, to track countries' progress over time, and to identify and recommend measures for improving the effectiveness of those responses. To date, the GSI has predominantly been used to assess stimulus spending of G20 countries. However, this forthcoming research extends this coverage to assess greenness of stimulus across many emerging economies. And whilst this analysis is in the context of COVID-19 recovery, the lessons are broadly applicable to many global, national, and localized economic crises and recovery strategies. So this assessment was conducted by combining the flow of each country's stimulus into key sectors of the economy, with an indicator of stimulus policies' environmental impact in each sector. And we do this by first categorizing and classifying the sectors of the economy that each policy will affect. And then we determine which policies are environmentally relevant and non-environmentally relevant, with environmentally relevant policies determined as those which flow into sectors of agriculture, industry, including energy and waste, and transportation. The environmentally relevant stimulus is then assessed to determine whether it's environmentally positive or negative in terms of its expected impact on climate and nature. So why do we think this is important? Well, the potential benefits of green spending are big. Emerging research suggests that public investment in green initiatives can deliver strong economic returns and, if well targeted, and simultaneously address social inequalities and create a clean and natural environment. This appears particularly true during periods of economic downturn, where job creation and economic rejuvenation are of key importance. By contrast, investments in high carbon industry and energy would bring significant long-term economic and climate dangers, whilst continuing to disproportionately harm minority communities. Emerging economies that are most dependent on environmentally intensive sectors face some of the biggest challenges to turn their stimulus green. Yet this importance of environmentally intensive sectors to the economy offers some of the biggest opportunities to maximize the benefits of green spending and drive sustainable economic growth. Yet what we see across the assessment of stimulus spending is that despite many positive examples of green stimulus, most governments have not used the COVID-19 stimulus to transform their economic trajectory in a way that enhances nature or responds to climate change at the scale required. And across the 14 countries for which stimulus policies have been assessed, we see that green spending on COVID-19 stimulus is currently relatively low, at around $105 billion, or approximately 11% of total stimulus spending. So many of the 14 countries assessed have made significant efforts to steer at least some of their stimulus spending towards green initiatives. However, we find that a significant proportion of stimulus spending is focused on short-term GDP outcomes, with inadequate concern for boosting long-term prosperity. There is, however, an opportunity to learn from what countries have done to date and to move subsequent public finance decisions towards preventing continued damage to the nature and climate. And we'll explore some of these opportunities in the next piece. So as we've discussed, emerging economy responses to COVID-19 and future crises have the potential to influence the course of climate change and nature degradation. And although green stimulus spending is not currently at the scale needed, there are many opportunities everywhere and many existing green spending initiatives to build on and expand.
Paul, I may have to interrupt you there just because in the interest of time.
No problem at all.
That was really great, and thank you for showing us that. And I ended intentionally on what you were saying, that there are lots of opportunities. We are seeing still some untapped potential. So if you don't mind, I would like to turn to the Deputy Minister, Dr. Arifin Rodianto from the National Development Planning Ministry of the Republic of Indonesia. So, Dr. Arifin, please share with us how you are maximizing opportunities for green recovery in collaboration with the EU and other international corporations.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Could you please send my slide presentation? Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, greeting from Jakarta. First of all, let me express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to join all of you today. I wish to congratulate the Director General of Global Green Growth Institute for hosting the side event of the European Union Pavilion COP this year. In the next slide, you will see that continuous pressure on Indonesia's natural carrying capacity and a business as usual and unsustainable development approach has contributed to various climate-related disasters, including drought, extreme weather, floods, and other severe natural hazards. Moreover, the stock of natural resources has been declining, and the quality of the environment has significantly decreased over time. Next slide. The terrible fact shows that we have been directly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and climate-driven disaster all at once in 2020. In the next slide, based on our study, Indonesia could suffer economic losses of up to 544 trillion rupiah during 2020 until 2024 due to climate change impact if there is no policy intervention or business as usual. This condition costs many, which is not only the economic side but also the social side. The cost of climate crisis due to the business as usual development approach would be worsened if collided with the COVID-19 crisis. In the next slide, today we have no option. The business as usual approach is considered no longer able to answer the challenge of economic and environmental problems simultaneously, especially after experiencing disruption due to climate change and pandemics. We should build back better towards a more resilient and sustainable future by putting low carbon development and climate action plans at the core of the recovery in our national development. In the next slide, therefore, the environmental issues have been divided into three priority programs. First, improving environmental quality. Second, enhancing disaster and climate resilience. And third, low carbon development with measurable indicators, such as environmental quality index, reduction of GDP potential loss due to disaster and climate issues, emission reduction target, and emission intensity reduction. In the next slide, it is undeniable that the national agenda and low carbon development initiative and the progress of its implementation have been greatly affected by the pandemic. Next. While due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the allocated state budget for low carbon development initiative activities in 2020 has decreased roughly around minus 32% compared to previous years, diverted for economic recovery and pandemic ending. In the next slide, however, there is no turn back despite building back better with low carbon development. We saw the great crisis as the opportunity to implement low carbon development in a more remarkable way. We found that green fiscal stimulus is at the intersection between national economic recovery and economic transformation, as it will encourage a more sustainable economy and growth in the future. In the next slide, in addition, we work intensively on green stimulus for the 2021 government work plan. There are 9 major projects to support the implementation of low carbon development out of the 42 strategic priority projects. In the next slide, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, currently the government of Indonesia is starting an interagency policy dialogue to establish a national net zero emission roadmap and target. We would be referring to our low carbon and climate resilience strategy to overcome the trade-off between economic recovery and climate crisis. Various studies have proven that employment from green business is higher than conventional or brown business. Labor absorption is compared through the full-time employment level, which describe the number of workers. The Garrett Peltier study in 2017 shows that the development of natural resource energy and energy efficiency infrastructure is able to absorb up to 5% more than fossil energy infrastructure development. We are confident that low carbon policy intervention from only energy, land, and agriculture sector could trigger more than 10 million new green job opportunities until 2060. In the next slide, the challenge is how to meet a huge amount of investment need to fund the net zero emission agenda. We will work hard to allocate the national budget and attract investment to address that. We believe that the formulation of supportive policies, establishing appropriate incentive and disincentive policies, developing pilot projects, and promoting the comparative advantage of green projects would increase the investment.
Thank you.
In the next slide.
Okay. Dr. Arifin and Deputy Minister, we would dwell on that point and your efforts there to maximize these opportunities. I would like to turn to Dr. Kashashne from Jordan. If you could very briefly, unfortunately, show us the Jordanian example and perhaps also highlight the collaboration with the European Union on the Green Deal and how the international cooperation plays into supporting green recovery, knowing that you in Jordan have done a lot of work to put in place national green growth policies and action plans. Please.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the kind invitation. We in Jordan consider ourselves as neighbor of EU. That's why we are approximating our legislation and our policy. And we hope that our action, even in green economy, to stimulate the Green Deal. I like one of the sentence was said by one of the previous panel speaker. Green Deal, it is equal to road map for sustainability. Once again, the effort was conducted by different municipalities in Europe, including in Scotland and in France and Netherlands, was very, for me at least, it is very good, and we can transfer this experience to our municipalities in Jordan. In addition, what we are doing at the level of government for the whole country. With launching the Green Deal, the EU sets an excellent model for how countries should move forward with their effort toward the green recovery to face economic recession and address environmental and the climate change challenges through sustainable and green economy approach. As you all might know, that Jordan faces economic challenges that are aggravated by negative sequences by COVID-19, as well the influx of refugees that put more pressure on the limited resources and an environment in Jordan. Jordan is working with the key development partners on green resilient recovery, bringing the need of economic growth and employment together with investment in green sectors in alignment with the national determined contribution and sustainable development goals. In 2017, Jordan, with support with GGI, developed its Green Growth Roadmap to institutionalize the national effort and pave the way toward moving the green economy. In 2020, we were able to develop a Green Growth National Action Plan supported by GGI, where it was injected in the development goals in different sectors. The Green Growth Action Plan targeted key sectors in Jordan, including agriculture, energy, wastewater, tourism, and transport, and mainly to support Jordan economic growth through enhancing sustainable development and contributing to sector of better resilience to climate change and catastrophic events such as COVID-19 pandemic. The action plan helped mainstreaming green growth, climate change, and sustainable development into the sectorial planning and implementation framework. The Green Growth Action Plan is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and the National Determined Contribution. The plan includes 86 actions. I am talking very fast. I know that we are constrained with the timing. The plan includes 86 actions that are either green growth, environmental enabling action, or investment opportunities that contribute together with our NDCs and adaptation plan to achieve our update NDC 31 reduction of greenhouse submitted recently to UNFCCC. It is important to emphasize on the importance of collaboration among public sectors and the importance of the private sector, civil society, NGO, and the international organization during the development of our plan, their important role of their implementation and the action. As the EU, Jordan has long-standing cooperation with EU, and we think that our effort toward transition into the green economy are in line with EU effort in Green Deal. Cooperation with EU include environment, green growth, and waste management, energy, water nexus approaches, especially energy, water, agriculture, food nexus. Such nexus support sustainability and environmental protection. As this effort, of course, there is more. But I will stop here. Thank you for invitation.
Thank you so much for wrapping that into. Now, I would thanks on behalf of DGI for this session. I would like to welcome Frederic up to do the final sentence of a wrap-up of the two panels. Thank you very much.
Well, what can I say? Thank you very much for this second panel. Very interesting. Oops, I have to be there. Sorry. So thank you very much for this very interesting panel. Thank you for this great session. I think we got a lot out of it. I take this opportunity to say also that we've been hearing a representative of nation states in the second panel, local governments in the first panel, and my wish is that we can come up with an agreement that brings together all those different stakeholders, of course, and that we can also enhance cooperation between cities and regions all across the world. And I know that for a lot of our colleagues from the developing countries, from the neighboring countries, from the Mediterranean, mayors and leaders from local governments strive to cooperate also with their European counterparts to build this resilient and sustainable future for all. Thank you very much, and have a good COP. Thank you. Or rest of COP.